chapter 6, verses 1 to 10.
Good morning, brothers and sisters. Lovely to be with you and enjoy fellowship together. Brethren, if a man is overtaken in any trespass, you who are spiritual, restore such a one in a spirit of gentleness, considering yourself, lest you also be tempted. Bear one another's burdens, and so fulfill the law of Christ. For if anyone thinks himself to be something when he is nothing, he deceives himself. But let each one examine his own work, and then he will have rejoicing in himself alone, and not in another. For each one shall bear his own load. Let him who is taught the word share in all good things with him who teaches. Do not be deceived. God is not mocked. For whatever a man sows, that he will also reap. For he who sows to his flesh will reap of the flesh, reap corruption. But he who sows to the Spirit will of the Spirit reap everlasting life. And let us not grow weary while doing good, for in due season we shall reap, if we do not lose our heart. Therefore, as we have opportunity, let us do good to all, especially to those who are of the household of faith. Amen.
Pass the exit text as well.
Sorry.
Pass the exit text as well.
Thank you.
Off the cues of having small print in my Bible. We looked at some of the verses from Galatians chapter 5 last week, and then some of the themes that we pick up there and what we pick up here in Galatians chapter 6. If you remember in chapter 5, it talks about the fruits of the flesh. It talks about works where we're self-seeking, selfish, and all those things about pleasing ourselves and wanting to take off other people. And then we looked at the fruit of the Spirit. And the fruit of the Spirit is quite different, because actually the fruit is there for other people's benefit. And it's one of the great differences between the Spirit-filled life and the natural life. The flesh always wants to please itself. The Spirit wants to please God. The flesh wants to be self-serving. The Spirit wants to be serving to others. And you have that constant theme throughout these two chapters, in Galatians chapter 5 and Galatians chapter 6. And it's important that we don't allow the break of the chapter to break the thought, because they're all interlinked one to the other. We would like to think, wouldn't we, that as we make our walk with God, we would like to believe that we become more mature in our relationship. We would like to feel that spiritual maturity is something that we are seeking to attain as we seek to follow the Master. And verse 1 talks about one of the signs of real, true, deep spiritual maturity. And that sign is, how do you react when you discover that Christians are not perfect? That's really what verse 1 is all about. Because we pretend to one another that we are perfect. But we know we're not. We know we're not. And yet the incredible thing is, we often act with amazement and shock when we discover that others aren't. This verse tells us that if a man is overtaken or caught in any trespass, if somebody has a failing, a weakness that we become aware of, what is our responsibility towards them? Well, it tells us in verse 1 what we should do. That we should seek to restore. And isn't that the heart of Christ for each and every one of us? Isn't that the heart of the communion table? Isn't that why Christ went to the cross? Isn't it all about restoration? Isn't it about bringing things back to how they should be? We were created to have God as our Father. Well, we were created to have fellowship with Him. And sin destroys that. Sin brings a barrier between us and the Father. Sin seeks to evict us out of the family. And when we come across sin with each other, when we come across our failings, how do we react? And the Bible says, well, the sign of spirituality is that we seek to restore. We seek to help. We seek to build up. And the Bible also tells us the spirit in which we do those things. And it's in gentleness. It's in kindness. It's with a soft spirit. No wonder we read in parables that a soft word can turn anger. A soft reply. I'm always reminded that when we look at the Lord's Prayer, there is only one thing in the Lord's Prayer that is our requirement. That we should forgive one another as we also are forgiven of our trespasses. And if you could grasp that truth, if that could be something that settles deep within our heart, that actually we understand that we are not perfect, and we understand that the people that we fellowship with are not perfect people. And our fellowship does not depend on perfection. Christian fellowship does not demand perfection, but it demands gentleness. It demands a big heart. It demands the law of Christ. And what is Christ's law? Because it goes on to say in verse 2 that we should bear one another, we should help to restore one another with the spirit of gentleness, considering ourselves, lest we also be tempted. That verse is reminding us, do not come at things with a sense of spiritual superiority, because it could be you next. It could be you. You could be the one seeking forgiveness. You could be the one seeking a gentle response. We should bear one another's burdens. Isn't that a lovely way of looking at things? Instead of delighting in finding other people's weak spots, we should seek to support them with it. Instead of gossiping about other people's failings, we should uphold them in prayer and pray for them. And verse 2 tells us that if we're bearing one another's burdens, if we're seeking to restore each other with the spirit of gentleness, the Bible tells us that we are fulfilling the law of Christ. What is the law of Christ? We know the law of the Ten Commandments. We know what we read in the Old Testament. But what was the law that Christ gave? He only gave one new commandment. A new commandment I give to you, that you love one another with the same love that I have loved you. It might only be one, but it's all embracing, isn't it? It might just be one commandment, but it is such a big ask, isn't it? That we should respond to each other with the same level of love with which Christ has responded to us. Well, how much does he love us? Well, he was willing to go to the cross for us, wasn't he? He was willing to take the punishment for our sin. That's why we opened with that hymn, and that's why we sang that verse again. Christ bore my burdens. You see, they weren't his burdens. It wasn't his problem. It was mine. My sin was my problem. My sin kept me away from my Father. But Christ came and he bore my burden. Christ came to solve my problem. Christ went to the cross for me. It's a lovely thing when we come across this spirit amongst each other. that we seek to help and support in our Christian walk. That being conscious of strengths and failings, instead of boasting in our strengths and rejoicing in others' failings, we allow God to use our strengths to compensate for other people's failings. And we allow God to use their strengths to compensate for ours. Just before Martin went on holidays, one of the sermons that he shared with us was the fact that the church is body ministry. And if you look at the individual members of your body, they are just right for what they need to do. But they're terrible at being used for something else. It's no good trying to thread a needle with your elbow. That's not what it's there for. That's what your fingers are for. We'd be pretty helpless without that elbow, wouldn't we? You see, each individual part has been designed to do the job that it was made for. And each and every one of us has been designed by God to do the job that we're called for. He is Father God. He is the master craftsman. He is the potter who is working the clay. The design is of his choosing, not ours. His plan is of his choosing, not ours. And once we realise that we are the people that we are, because God has made us the way that we are, because God has got a calling for each and every one of us, it helps us, doesn't it? When we're looking sideways and we're making those comparisons, and we're sometimes wishing we have the strengths of somebody else. And God is challenging that and saying, are you accusing me of making mistakes? You've got the strengths that you need for the works that I call you to. Bear one another's burdens and so fulfill the law of Christ. Love with his love. Allow the love of God to be working within our hearts and allow it to sink deep into our thoughts, into our motives, into our deeds, into our actions. It makes a huge difference to who we are. Makes a huge difference to how we think. Makes a huge difference to how we pray. Makes a huge difference to how we live. It explains verse 3, doesn't it? Because verse 3 reminds us that we're not to be thinking about ourselves and patting ourselves on the back for our strengths. We shouldn't think that any of the abilities and giftings and skills that God has given to us, we shouldn't think about it as something to boast in. For if anyone thinks himself to be something, when he is nothing, he deceives himself. Chapter 5 warns us about seeking works that benefit ourselves. Chapter 5 talks us about having a mindset, having an attitude. Our ambitions are all about self-advancement. The Bible warns us against that. The Bible tells us that we should never use how the world works in ladders. The world works in ladders. We see it in social media so much, where if somebody makes a mistake, everybody piles into that. And really, they're just grateful that their mistakes aren't public. If anyone thinks himself to be something when he is nothing, he deceives himself. Do not measure yourself by what we see around us. Do not take the measure against one another. The Bible never ever tells us to do that. The Bible always gives us our example and our measure. And it's only ever one. It is Christ. Christ is our example. Christ is our measure. Christ is our pattern. He is the one that we hold to. Goes on to talk in verse 4 about examining our own work. You can see what Paul is conscious of, isn't he? He's saying that because we're aware sometimes of failings in each other, there's a danger that we start examining each other. that we start looking and making judgments around each other. And Paul is saying, no, be careful that you look into your own heart. I've said it before, and I'll say it now, and I'll say it in the future. Never lose sight of the fact that when we stand before God, we will give an account for our life. Nobody else's. He won't ask our opinion on anybody else, even our nearest and dearest. Our opinion of their walk is not what we will be asked. God will ask you about what you've done with the life that He's given to you. What have we done? When we gather on the communion and we look at the verses that Paul shared to the church of Corinth, what is the exhortation that comes as we gather around this table? It is that we should examine ourselves. That it is a moment when we look inward. So we're saying that the work of the Spirit looks outward. When we're considering our works, we look inward. We're not looking to judge other people's standing in Christ. We're looking to judge our own. We're not looking to judge and give verdicts about what other people feel they should and shouldn't do. We're looking in our own heart. We're looking at our own actions. We're looking at our own motives. One of the hardest things for any of us is to be honest with our hearts. The Bible warns us that even our hearts is seeking to deceive us. Even our inward workings is trying to excuse us, is trying to explain us. And we need to allow our lives to come under God's gaze. Not under the gaze of the world, not under the gaze of each other, under the gaze of God. To allow Him and His refining look. The stuff that sometimes we are so dear to and we hold to, will it stand the Father's gaze? The stuff that takes our time, our money, our attention, will it stand before the day of judgment? When we stand before the Father and the refining fire is applied to it, will it come through as refined gold? Or will it just be burned up as worthless dross, as rubbish? And that is why the exhortation is to be so conscious of the fact that we should examine the work that we are doing. Because God's going to examine it one day as well. It behoves us to have that inner reflection so that when we stand before Him, we don't stand there ashamed. We don't stand there with the what-ifs of life. We need to be honest with what God is doing with us. We need to be honest about what is happening deep within the workings of our own heart, to examine what we are about. Why? Because then we will have rejoicing. If we're willing to go through that process of examining ourselves, of allowing the light of God's word, allowing the leading of God's Spirit there deep within our heart, it is for our benefit. If we allow the refining fire to be applied to our thoughts, our motives, our ambitions, it will be for our eternal benefit. Make sure that we look inward. Make sure that we find value for what we are doing for God in our own walk. Because just as there's danger in looking around and seeing fault in others, there's danger in resting in the work of others. We have to be careful that we don't exalt people. We have to be careful that we're not relying upon other people's walk. We have to make sure that when the storm comes, because it will come, the Bible is very clear about that, we have to be sure that when the storm comes, the Master is in our boat. He's with us, not with somebody else. He needs to be with us. We need to be saved. We need to be children of God. We need to have a relationship with Him. He needs to be holding our hand. And it doesn't matter how strong the work is in other people. It doesn't matter how much our friends or families might be holding on to God. We need Him. We need Him in our life. We need Him in our heart. Verse 5 gives us a very clear warning, doesn't it? Each one shall bear his own load. You see, it seems a bit of a paradox throughout these two chapters, because we're talking about having outward-looking hearts, we're talking about sharing, we're talking about bearing one another's burdens, and yet Paul is very clear that we also need to understand that God has called us to do a work. God has a plan for our life, and that is the life that we are accountable for. So we need to be careful that as we walk through life, that we don't avoid the works that He's calling us to. We don't find reasons not to do when He calls to do. We need to be willing to bear the load. Because the Bible says each will bear his own load. But whose work are we really doing? If we're acting according to the impulse of the Spirit of God, if we're listening to the leading of God, then we're doing His work. And that is why He needs us to be faithful servants. Because if His church refuses to do His work, who will? If the church refuses to follow the leading of God, then who will? Verse 6 talks about the fact that people who are taught the word need to share with those who teach. It talks about within the body ministry there is that ability to support each other's ministries as well. So you see the sharing and the personal responsibility tied into one again. You see how God takes this paradox and weaves it in. That yes, we are responsible for what God is calling us to do. But what God will call you to do is to help each other. What God will call you to do is to support one another. Verse 7 tells us that we need to be careful not to be deceived. Because God is not mocked. And whatever we sow, that is what we reap. Whatever we apply our hands to, whatever we apply our hearts to, whatever we apply our thoughts to, whatever we apply our prayers to, whatever a man sows, that he will reap. Because if we're sowing to the flesh, if we're sowing to selfish ambition, if we're sowing to our needs, our wants, then we will of the flesh reap corruption. All those warnings in chapter 5 about all the things that come from the self-seeking heart, if they are what is motivating our life, then we're in trouble. We need to sow to the Spirit. We need to allow the will of the Spirit to be worked out in our life. And the Bible tells us that in verse 8 there it says that he who sows to the Spirit will of the Spirit reap everlasting life. The works that you do for God will stand the test of time. They will stand the test of eternity. They will stand the gaze of heaven. It doesn't mean that our service is perfect. It doesn't mean that we won't make mistakes. But when we come to the end of our days, when we look back upon the time that God has given us on earth, have we used it for our benefit or for the benefit of others? Have we been self-seeking or spirit-seeking? Have we been selfish or selfless? Have we followed the example of the Saviour? Have we been willing to walk in His footsteps? When He went about doing good, not for Himself, but doing good for others. It will last for eternity. There are things that we can do for God here on earth that will last for eternity. Verse 9 gives us another warning. It tells us that we should not grow weary while doing good. Well, if the warning is there, it must be that the opposite is possible. If Paul is there saying, don't grow weary from doing good, then it's possible that we can grow weary from doing good. What is it that motivates our Christian service? Do we do it for the praise of men? Do we do it for immediate reward? Do we do it that we might glory in what God is about? Or do we do it for him? And do we leave it in his hands? What are the things that stop us serving? What are the things, as we look back over our life, why did we stop doing the things that we knew that God wanted us to do? What are the things that have just made us grow weary with it? Fix your eyes upon Jesus. Look full in his wonderful face and tell me he's not worth it. If we look to Jesus, if we remember the cross, then whatever we do for him, he's worth it. Let us not grow weary while doing good, for in due season, and that's the secret of this verse. In due season, in God's time, the reaping will come if we do not lose heart. Be faithful in the service that God called you to do. And even if you look around and you think, well, this isn't really doing much, if you know it's what God has called you to do, be faithful and keep doing it. Would you be willing to serve him for 30 years if only one person ever came to Christ? Would you look and think, is it worth 30 years service? Think about it from heaven's perspective. If there's a soul in heaven, and part of the reason that they're there is because you've been faithful in your service, what else could you have done in 30 years that's more important than that? It helps us. It helps us to be faithful. It helps us to be diligent when we apply things from God's perspective, when we look at things from heaven. Let us not grow weary while doing good, for in due season we shall reap. If we're doing the work of God, God's plans and purposes are fulfilled. Each and every generation, there are always people to be reached with the gospel. Each and every generation, there are always hearts that will respond to the gospel. And our job is to serve him. Our job is to present Christ to the generation that we serve. Do not lose heart. Yes, on times it may be difficult, but God is with us. We are about the Master's service, and it's a privilege to be working with him. So verse 10 ends with an exhortation for each and every one of us. Therefore, as we, I love that, it's plural, isn't it? Therefore, as we have opportunity, and I can guarantee you this, we all have opportunity. God gives each and every one of us things to do, people to meet, conversations to have, prayers to pray. Each and every one of us, we have opportunity. Therefore, as we have opportunity, let us do good to all. See how it's coming in again. It's our opportunity to help. It's our opportunity to give. It's our opportunity to reach out. Let us do good to all, especially to those who are of the household of faith. But notice, it's especially, not exclusively. Important we don't make that mistake. The opportunity to do good goes beyond these four walls. The opportunity to do good goes beyond the family of God. The opportunity to do good is there for all. But even more so for each other. It comes back to how the chapter starts. Our thought should be to help. Our thought should be to support, to encourage, to build up. We thank God for the privilege of being the children of God. But we must never lose sight that with privilege comes responsibility. And to whom much has been given, much will be required. But it's not something to cause fear in our hearts. He has equipped us to do the work that he calls us to do. He never demands something of us that he hasn't enabled us to do it. He has given us everything we need to do the works that he has called us to. But it still needs our acceptance, our obedience, and our willingness. And as we look at the cross, as we remember the communion table, we thank God for his Son's willingness, for his Son's obedience. And may that be our pattern for all our Christian service in his name. Amen.